Light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board. We are the weirdos, mister.
Black as night, erase death from our sight. White as light, mighty hectate make it right. I myself am strange and unusual.
Cast a circle, spark some incense, and grab a cup of tea, because it's time for the Cousins Coven podcast. I'm Sharon.
And this is Wendy. Welcome back to the Coven, you guys. So this is episode 33, and we've decided this is the end of season 1. We wanted to thank you guys so much for coming along for the ride. It's just time for us to take a little bit of a break. Thank you so much for listening to us and joining us.
We have really just taken this whole podcast thing by storm and really started without really knowing what we were doing. And we've put so much effort and work into this and research into this. And we just decided it'd be better to take a break and maybe take some time making season 2. That way we have more time to research and more time to edit, so we're not like always pressuring ourselves to get on this deadline, and give ourselves some like work-life balance. And really, in the meantime, if you want to stay in touch with the Coven, as always, you can sign up for our newsletter. We're still going to be keeping that going during our break, so you can get updates on what we're doing. And we would really love any kind of topic suggestions, whether it be the cauldron topics, what kind of magic you guys want to talk about, or what kind of practitioners you want to hear about, and what kind of weird topics should we be researching. What do you guys like when we research?
Yeah, absolutely. And we don't know exactly when we're going to come back yet, but we'll keep you posted. That's why it's essential that you join our newsletter. So if you haven't already, go to cousinscoven.home.blog and sign up for that. And we look forward to doing more episodes.
Yes.
On the next season.
Yes, we're definitely going to keep going. So just give us some time and we'll be back.
Yeah. Yep.
Did you have anything you wanted to talk about? Or?
Sure, I can talk about, so this thing I had happen, I went to a doctor's appointment this week, and it was kind of strange. I've lived in Salem pretty much my whole life, and this road, they did some construction on it, and I didn't know it because it's not a road that I go down very often, and they changed the lanes, and so... but when they changed the lanes of the road, they didn't finish painting the lines. Mm-hmm. It's like they didn't have any signs up saying that there was a change in the way that they were doing things. So the lane that I was in was ending, but I didn't see it. It just came to an abrupt end, and there was a car next to me, and I almost got in an accident, and I felt so bad. The person was honking at me, but I was like, I'm so sorry. And then I went on to my appointment, and I was still kind of frustrated afterwards. Like, why didn't it get fixed? And all the way, why would they just leave it like that? There were no signs that they were still working on the road. So I don't understand why the road was like that.
Right.
Well, I was kind of driving erratically afterwards because I was so frustrated and sort of angry.
Yeah.
And I was letting the anger get the best of me. And then all of a sudden, so I have these CDs that are up on my visor on the passenger side. And they're in there really tightly. They've been in there. I hardly ever pull them out. And they started flinging themselves at me as I was driving and hitting me in the hand, like just,
oh my gosh.
I don't know. So I just took it as a message from the universe saying, calm down.
Right?
Watch what you're doing.
You can handle whatever we throw at you, including the CD from the 90s.
Exactly. But I was just like, oh my gosh, it's pelting me. And it was just one right after the other. And they're in there so tightly. So it had to have been the universe trying to get their attention of me. It's just so crazy.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that, because like driving is one of those things that can make all of us become so inhumane and become so aggressively assholes. For whatever reason, I just feel like I can get super mad when I can't drive effectively, or people are like cutting me off. And like, I used to have a really long commute, like 30 minutes to work, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And I would get so angry all the time. And then eventually I was like, you know what? I just need to not drive with the intention of getting there quickly. I just have to go with the flow and drive slow. And I started going in the slowest lane all the way on the right and going like 60 and driving like a grandma and not caring so much about like the swiftness of my driving. And then I just had to zen drive and really check out, because it was the only way to keep me from freaking out. And when you were starting to mention like how the roads didn't have like the proper signage and or like the dots in the road, dude, when I moved over to San Antonio, Texas when I was 18, I was appalled because like half of the streets here do not have any kind of markings in the road. And I remember like at night I'd be driving, I'm like, where the hell am I? How many lanes does this road have? What is going on? Like they have the worst roads and the worst drivers here, I swear. And so like a lot of the times there's no markings. And then you go back to Oregon and it's so freaking beautiful and pristine and the roads are clean and there's like these perfect Pac-Man little dots everywhere. It's crazy.
Oh my gosh, I feel spoiled now.
Oregon's got some pretty good roads. Like when you drive other places, it's you kind of appreciate it more.
Yeah, I've only driven in the Northwest, you know, Oregon, Washington, California, Idaho. Everywhere I've been, it's been kind of nice. And I think the only place on the East Coast I've been driven was in Pennsylvania.
Oh, okay.
And even there, I thought it was fine. Their roads were nice. So...
Well, I'm really glad that nothing happened on your wreck and that you were safe.
Yes, me too. I'm so glad it was avoided, but I was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So we had a friend of Sharon's, right? It was a friend of yours, your hairdresser?
Yeah, it's actually my awesome hairdresser. She's like such an awesome person, and she sent us some pictures of this altar she found in the woods. So it was the woods in Spicewood, Texas, near Travis Lake. And how would you describe these photos?
They were it kind of looked like an altar. So the tree was decorated with these, what looked like wind chimes, but instead of chimes themselves, it was like bones and sticks and rocks. And then there were some
mojo bags, right? You said a red one, a blue one.
Yeah, a red and blue mojo bag. There was a fire pit, a very small one that had been built up. And I think that you and I were trying to figure out what it was used for, if it was just for regular everyday kind of magic or something more.
Yeah.
We're just trying to figure out what it was used for. What were your thoughts on it?
I don't know what I thought. Like if I see a tree out in nature that looks like maybe someone's doing some sort of ritual, I try to think it's for good purposes. I don't really like to think automatically, oh, it's like evil magic. I'm just thinking maybe it was a sacred place that they decided to go out in nature and, you know, worship and connect with the trees because trees are super powerful.
Right.
I don't know. Like what were your thoughts?
Well, I know that when I was looking at the photos, I initially just started having images of somebody there who was, I don't know if they were dumping ashes of a loved one that had passed away or was kind of like doing some sort of protection for them as they were passing on in their journey or something. But it reminded me of somebody who had passed away. I don't know why, but I started getting these kind of visions while I was looking at the pictures of just somebody.
Awesome. So you were getting like visions. I remember we talked about that, what it's called. It was some sort of clear something when you can, some sort of clairvoyancy when you're looking at pictures.
Yeah,
and you get the meaning.
When you're looking at photos. Yeah, everything has some sort of divination to it
does,
apparently.
Right?
Yeah.
Everything. So you're thinking it was like paying respects to someone who passed on?
Yeah. Or maybe they were even dumping the ashes of a loved one there. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's for sure. And I just respect the person and their space, like you were saying earlier. Just, it's a good thing to just give them their own space. We don't want to invade on it in any way. Mm-hmm. But it was cool that your hairdresser shared those with us.
Yeah.
They were really beautiful pictures.
Right? I'm so glad that when someone's stumbling upon something magical, they think of us. So we love when you guys share with us. So keep it up, especially during this break.
Exactly. I did a little bit of research too, just to find out if other people had seen stuff like that. And I came across some pictures of people actually finding full on altars, like as far as pews and altars, like it may have been a religious situation. Mm-hmm. And who knows how long that stuff had been there, because it looked like it was ancient.
Right.
Just in the middle of nowhere, they find this abandoned open church.
Right. That's so cool. I know like recently there's this park that me and my friend Maria and Vinny were going to, and they actually found this like little teepee stick thing made out of sticks, and it had like a stone path leading up to it. And I want to say there was like maybe a trinket or two like next to the teepee. And so it was off in this distance of the park. Like there's the main area and the playground, and then you got to walk off like maybe 10-15 minutes to the side, and hardly anyone really ever goes out that far. And it's kind of like a weird random paths that like twist and wind, and like the first time we went to it, we were trying to figure out what path was the right way to get there, and so you can easily kind of get uninterested in that area. There's really nothing to go see, but we wanted to find the little teepee, and when I got there, like there was just so much energy that it kind of freaked me out. Like I felt like I was intruding by even being around it, and I was just like, I don't want to touch this, and I don't really want to stand around it, but I really think this is cool. Can we make like our own little area, but like over there? Because I didn't want to do magic on their spot, because it really felt weird, like I was crossing some other energy. And so like maybe 20 paces back, we made a stone circle, and we started like walking around and collecting all the biggest rocks we could find and making a big circle so that we could have our craft moment and do some outdoor magic.
Nice. That's so cool. How fun to come across something like that. I can't say I've ever found anything like that, but maybe someday. Very cool. Let's talk about Notre Dame really quick. So we heard that there is a fire that just happened yesterday.
Yeah, it's so tragic because it's such an old building, like what is it, 12th and 14th century, and it was so devastating to see like the spire collapsing. And I really don't know how much damage has been done. I think that they are confident that they can rebuild. And one of the crazy things is they were in the middle of like remodeling the whole thing.
Right.
And apparently that they removed the gargoyles a week ago, and they're, gargoyles are supposed to protect that cathedral and take care of it, and then it freaking starts burning.
Dang.
And so there's a lot of conspiracy theories already flying around, like what's going on and why is this happening. And I kind of want to look into the Notre Dame Cathedral more, because a quick Google search like just yesterday led me to find that people were like in a quick blurb just mentioning, oh yeah, by the way, this used to be like a pagan temple, and or there's a pagan temple buried underneath.
Oh my gosh.
And apparently like during different construction eras over time, they found like statues to Jupiter and all these different gods in the basement. And so there's a lot of people who say there's a pagan temple in the basement. So I don't think it was always a Catholic thing, but maybe it was. Like I really want to look into it and pay my respects and know more about this place, because like once you lose something so historical and beautiful, like I'm starting to like, oh my God, no, like why?
Right.
So I just want to try to pay my respects to it in some way and gain more insight onto it.
Yeah. I know when I was listening about it on the news this morning, they were saying how they were updating some electrical inside, but somehow it caught on fire outside the building.
So it's electrical?
Which it sounds very strange that they would be working inside the building on electrical, and the building caught on fire outside somehow on the scaffolding.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was like, that's odd.
It is odd. So I kind of want to keep my eyes on that story and see what else develops and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
I definitely want to look into it too. I'm very interested. I had no idea that they potentially had, pagan backgrounds. So I want to look into that for sure.
Yeah. I remember once I was in like this, I went to like a Wiccan class in a shop here in town. And the lady was telling me, she's like, yeah, basically any church you go to, it was a pagan church and or temple that's like an older one anyway. And she was mentioning one in Europe that like somehow when it's a certain kind of equinox, the light shines through at a certain angle and shines down on like a cross, and it used to be a pentagram. And like I don't really know the legitimate, I guess-ness of all of that. I never looked into it myself, but I really want to start looking into the old temples that used to be. Like there used to be a lot of temples for like the goddesses and all that kind of stuff, and I'm just so fascinated to see what I guess our pagan history was and how it got kind of erased and rewritten.
Right, absolutely. How fascinating. Now this is the history we should have been learning in school all along.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's natural for things to evolve, but
right.
Yeah. Well, hopefully the Notre Dame isn't too far damaged and they can repair and get those gargoyles back in and start protecting it.
Exactly. I did hear that they were able to save most of the art, and it was a good thing that they didn't have the gargoyles there, but since the gargoyles weren't there, they weren't able to protect it.
I know. So maybe we'll look into that on our break and see if there's any other kind of conspiracies we can uncover.
Absolutely. I'd also like to know what kind of gargoyles they were, if they have names.
Oh, I bet.
How many there are. Oh my gosh. I bet they were each there for a certain reason.
I bet.
All right, so let's move on. So today we're going to be talking about mythical creatures, but first it's time for cauldron topics.
Whoop, whoop.
And in the cauldron today, we're talking about Beltane. I didn't really know anything about Beltane going in, so I was really excited to learn about it, and I can't wait to share what I found with you. I know you've already celebrated this, so...
I love Beltane, yes. So I'm so glad we can talk about it.
Yeah, hopefully I can do it some justice. Beltane is coming on May 1st, and in some regions, this festival is referred to as May Day. It's kind of this halfway point between spring and summer. Found out it originated in Ireland, in the land of the Esseith, which is the same fairy tribe of the leprechauns.
That's so
which we
awesome.
talked about before. Yeah, very cool. Loving it. I found out it was centered around a fire ritual for livestock farmers and their crops, and mostly because this was the beginning of the farming season, they wanted to make sure to provide protection for the farms and also to give it some sort of positive growth to the community, as well as to bring about bountiful crops and make sure that the cattle were producing and the sheeps and all of that.
Now that's some organic farming.
Exactly. So in this ritual, all of the fires in the community, I'm just going to actually, I should say, I'm going to kind of go about, talk about what the ritual was like back in the old days when it first began. And so originally they would start by putting out all of the fires in every home in the community, just making sure that no fires were burning in any of the homes or outside of the homes. And then they would begin to start decorating all of the community in like yellow ribbons with yellow flowers, all of it to represent kind of the fire element. And then the community, I'm talking about when the community decorates, they decorated everything, the trees, the bushes, the homes, and even the livestock, putting like flowers on their livestock.
That's awesome.
Which I thought was really cute.
Yeah.
And then they would kind of ahead of time prepare to determine where they were going to put the bonfires that they were going to do. And then they would typically be preferably on a mountain or a hill overlooking the town. And they would make two big, giant, large, I'm just saying all these big things that mean the same word, but it's basically this giant bonfire. Mm-hmm. And these fires would end up gaining the power from the waxing energies of the sun. So just like the moon can wax and wane, so does the sun. And this waxing of the sun is when its warmth is starting to be felt. I mean, it is May, so here in the northern hemisphere, we start really feeling the sun's rays. And everyone would come to the bonfires. All of the families in the town, the farmers, they would even bring their livestock with them. And then they would do this kind of ritual where the livestock would either walk around the fire or jump through the fire.
That's risky.
Right? Very risky, but it was so that it could give these properties of protection and growth to the livestock. Mm-hmm. So then a person from each home would be designated to take a torch and light it in the bonfire, and then they'd take that torch back home and start the fires back in their homes. So now the protection and the bountifulness is happening inside the homes as well as outside the homes. And they would then start providing offerings for the fairies and the gods of the regions, and they'd have this big party. So they'd bring all of this food and they'd start cooking it, and when they'd cook it, they'd cook it on the fires. So all of this party would happen around the fires itself. And, you know, just like everything else, some of the things that they would do, like some of the offerings they would give varies from region to region. Some of them would give meat and flowers, and some of them would just give stones, or they would make something pretty for them or make wines. Mm-hmm. One of the things that they did like to do was the maypole, which I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yes.
I love it. It's so beautiful. So there's this thing that they do. It's this very large pole, and they take these ribbons and they mount it at the top. And usually a maypole is for fertility, but it could also be for just fertility for the crops. Like I remember when I was little, there was this old Mother Goose rhyme that I was reading, and it was about the May Day dance. And when they showed the pictures, it was just these cows holding onto the ribbons dancing around the pole.
Mm-hmm. That's adorable. Yeah, I would say like it's definitely a phallic symbol. Like all my knowledge about the holidays, the Espats and the Sabbats, like the Wheel of the Year is like the pagan, I guess, cycle of holidays. And so when I looked into Beltane originally, it was really about like the courtship of the god and the goddess as far as the religious outlook of it. And so like every Sabbat has this relationship between them where they're like courting each other, mating, having a baby, giving birth around Christmas to the newborn, kind of like how Jesus became born around then, was because that was was adopting the pagan rites. So around Beltane, you have like the phallic symbols, because that's like the time when the god and the goddess are actually like consummating their relationship and having some sexy time. So like Beltane's supposed to be pretty like, I guess, very into the fertility, like you're saying. And of course that goes into the crops, because that's the time when we're getting all of our crops and preparing and everything.
Exactly. So I came across this other part of the ritual that they would do in some of the regions, and where they would make a specific oatmeal cake, and then they would cut it into triangle shapes, and then one of the pieces was marked with charcoal from the fire. They would hide these pieces of cakes in little bonnets, and no one would know which one was marked, and then the cake would be handed out, and then whoever had the marked piece had to become part of the ritual itself. So this meant, in some instances, like I was reading stories, sometimes it just meant that they needed to go through the fire 3 times back and forth, like actual directly through the fire, where they would end up getting burned through the process.
Oh, God.
Or they would be sacrificed.
No, that's horrible.
Yeah, as a sacrifice to the gods for good crops. So I was like, oh my gosh, like everybody was included, even the children.
Yeah.
So imagine
That's
that.
horrible.
I don't know I don't know the reality of that, if they actually did it. It was just some regions told stories of their town actually sacrificing.
I'm not a fan of sacrifice in any means, but I understand that happened. I would be much more happy if they sacrificed like a goat
right
than your neighbor.
Exactly.
And then, oh my God, wouldn't it be great if you could like be really vindictive about it and just get out the one person that everybody hates in the town?
Probably. Yeah.
I feel like they wouldn't
ooh.
be willing to just be into it, but maybe they were so devoted to the cause.
Yeah, maybe.
That's scary.
It is. Like, could you imagine that? And you're like, oh, sorry, Jimmy, you're out.
Yeah.
It's you today.
Yeah.
So when the festival was starting to end, they wouldn't actually put the fires out themselves. They would wait for the fires to douse themselves out. And then the farmers would take the ash and rub it on themselves and the livestock. And they would also take it and till it into the dirt where they were going to grow their crops, just sort of as an extra protection. Okay, so by the 1900s, as more food began to be produced by companies instead of people, the customs changed, and a lot of people stopped celebrating Beltane, which is kind of sad because the actual ritual of it is so pretty. The fact that they would do all these bonfires and everything. So as it is today, instead of a ritual, mostly they are doing like a festival where they're just honoring Beltane, and they do light big bonfires from what I read online. I've never actually been to one, and they have performance artists and dancing and booths and food, and I'm sure that the food that they provide is similar to what they had back then. I've never been to one or even know if they do them here, but maybe one of these days I'll find it.
I was really excited to find like a Beltane festival going on in town this month, and
Nice.
I have been solitary for so long. I remember getting really depressed on one of my first or second Beltanes. I didn't have any witch friends at the time, and I was just like walking around the park like, I am alone. I am utterly alone. Like, I just felt like Lydia from Beetlejuice for a minute. And
Right.
like the idea of going and doing an actual festival with other people sounds so awesome. So it's actually held at the Victorian Black Swan Inn, which is haunted, and it's been on a lot of ghost shows, and I've never been, and so that's another reason I want to go. And it's called the Witches Ball and Beltane Festival, and they're gonna have fire pits, and they encourage costumes, and they're gonna have vendors and music, and I'm just like, yes. So I'm really gonna try to go. It's not a free event. You do have to pay to get in, so that would be the only thing that might hinder me from going, but I'm planning on going, and I even have a costume. Like, I went through my closet and I found this like Renaissance dress I bought years ago when I went to my first Ren fair, and
Nice.
so I'm pretty sure I'm gonna go all out, and I will try to update you guys and post pictures if I go.
That would be so awesome. I can't wait to see and hear about it.
Yeah.
Hopefully you get to go.
Yes.
Let's see. I did come across something that I thought was worth mentioning about ways that you can celebrate Beltane as a solitary witch. Mainly it's decorating the altar in yellow or colors representing fire, using those specific candles. So basically it's the same thing as any ritual. You'd want to cast cast a circle, call on the four corners. Once you're done doing that, make sure all of the candles are extinguished in your home, or even if you're doing this outside, make sure your fire outside is also extinguished. And then you'll want to start a fire anew, a new one, just so you're, just like in the original ritual, you want to do it the same. And then you would light your candles off of that main fire. And then while you're doing this, you're just going to want to basically talk about manifest your goals for this season, and also provide protection for your home and your family and just your life in general. And you can write those down, and you can burn them if you'd like in the fire. Just don't do what Sharon did last time and burn too much.
Yeah, you gotta be careful with your bonfires, guys.
Yeah. Make sure to also give an offering. I suggest like yellow flowers or some sort of light colored wine. And this spell should actually last you until Samhain or the next Sabbath that you choose to, or Sabbath?
Sabbath? Yeah, right. I hear both.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the next Sabbath that you choose to celebrate.
Yeah.
It's basically all I had. Did you want to add anything to it?
I was looking over my original Book of Shadows because I had printed all this information about Beltane. And I guess during my studies, I had found that some of the color associations now are red and white. And so I would always decorate with red and white flowers. And I was watching the newest episodes on the Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Did you get to the Lupercalia episode?
Yes.
I was
oh my gosh, so awesome.
In that episode, they legit have a maypole and they're dancing around, and it's very sexual, that whole holiday that they're doing. And then the little ribbons on the maypole were red and white, and I was like, ooh, do they know what they're doing right now? And I legit was like, are they just trying to rip off Beltane, but they don't want to say Beltane? And then I googled Lupercalia because I was like, that word is so fake and made up. What a stupid word. That sounds like they just wanted to put the word lube and make it sound magical.
Oh.
And then I found out
I thought it was
real. It's a real thing.
Oh. See, I thought it had to do with wolves because wolves are Lupra something.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was like, lube? This is so silly. Is this an ad for some sort of lube?
I thought they were saying loop, like Lupe.
Probably.
Lupercarian.
Probably, but I just heard the word lube, and that's my side tangent. I just thought it was kind of interesting. It was like, whoa, is this Beltane inspired? Because all these teenagers are trying to have sex. I don't get what's going on.
Right.
But yeah, I really love Beltane. I'm excited to go maybe to this festival. I know you're supposed to jump over the fires, like you said, for good luck. So
yeah,
I hope I can do some fire jumping.
No kidding. How cool.
But this is definitely a fun little Sabbath, and thanks for sharing your research.
Yes, I was glad to. Should we move on?
Yes, let's go ahead and move on to our mythical creatures. So many mythical creatures that we know today were once considered as real as any other species. And the question that remains now is, were they once upon a time real? And although there are many mythical creatures out there, we are going to focus on two of the most beautiful and magical, mermaids and unicorns. Yes. Woo-hoo. So I know it's interesting that we chose these two, but they're super trendy right now, which is really a newer thing. I feel like in the last year or two, anywhere you go, you'll see unicorn stuff and mermaid stuff. And I don't mind it. I like it. I, in fact, am drinking out of a unicorn mug right now that says "You Are Loved" with this unicorn on it.
I love it. I used to be obsessed with unicorns when I was little. Every sticker I had was of a unicorn.
Unicorns. I remember having a unicorn fuzzy board poster. Do you remember those?
Yes, I love those where you have to color in the lines.
Yes. I've always been a big fan of mermaids, and I just think they're so beautiful. So I did some research on mermaids today, and I'm going to go ahead and share that with you guys. So
all right,
one of the big arguments that's going to come up anytime we talk about ocean dwellers is the fact that the ocean covers 71% of the Earth's surface, and they say that more than 95% of the ocean has not been explored. So really, who knows what could be hiding in the depths of the sea? Is there Aquaman? Is there Little Mermaid? And so I want to know, could mermaids be lurking in the ocean somewhere, or maybe at once upon a time they were and they're now extinct? And so looking into mermaids, you can see that they appear in folklore and paintings. There's even currency that has them on there. There's old scriptures, and this is covering numerous cultures worldwide, dating back from a time period where they really had no communication between them. So it's really interesting that all these cultures have lore that collaborates with each other, like whether it be dragons, fairies, and gnomes, or Sasquatch. Like, I just find it super fascinating. And for years, people believed that mermaids were actually real, and they would talk about them like they were real. And this was usually during like the medieval times. And mermaids, if you think about it, they've always been associated with beauty and bright colored hair, sex appeal. And on the opposite side, they are associated with misfortune, death, and luring sailors off course and onto rocky waters. And even mermen have like badass reputations. They're usually depicted as being strong, sexy, muscly guys with like 8-packs. And they're good with summoning storms, sinking ships, and they are also known for drowning sailors in lore. And there's one particular group that I came across called the Blue Men of the Minch, I think is how you say it. And they are said to dwell off the coast of Scotland. And when I read about the Blue Men, I just automatically thought of like the group, the singing group, or the band, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
But these men, they are basically blue tinted skin, and they have gray beards, and they were said to lure the local men, basically to them when they would be swimming by, and they would challenge the captains to a rhyming contest. And if the captain was quick enough, on his wits, and he could rhyme with them, then the blue men would let them cross peacefully and continue on their journey. But if the captain couldn't, I guess come up with a quick rhyme, then they would drown them there on the spot.
Oh my gosh. That's severe, just because they couldn't come up with a rap.
Yeah, this is some ancient sailor rap lore. You need to be really quick-witted, and we're gonna throw down. And if you can't throw down, you're going down. And then, if you want to go all the way back to the beginning, the first known mermaid stories appeared in Assyria, and this is 1000 BC. And it's this ancient Syrian goddess. Her name is Atargatis, and she was known for fertility, and she would watch over the people, and she was just really in charge of their general well-being. So she was a goddess, and she was actually human from the waist up, and then fish below. And the Syrians even had a giant temple for her, and I wish it was still around. And there was a giant pond in the middle full of sacred fish. And again, as a Pisces, that just really spoke to me, and I'm like, I want to be up in that temple.
Right? You're like, I want to go there right now.
Yes. And I just imagine a communion for the Syrians praying to her would be a little bit of goldfish. Take this goldfish and this wine. Many will say that the origin of the mythical mermaid is actually a manatee or a dugong, and they just assume that people in their boats were seeing the fin of a manatee. And this is something I've heard ever since as I was a kid, and it just kind of seems ridiculous. Do we really think that people are going to see a gray-skinned fin and just assume it's a mermaid?
Right. Or if they saw the top of the manatee, yeah. Have you seen a manatee?
Right. Where are we getting the sexy...
But they're not beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I just don't see how you could... Oh, the fin must mean that they have a sexy breasts and hair and they're gorgeous. I guess that's just how lonely they imagine sailors are. But
yeah.
I don't
or
really
they were
agree.
Drunk.
Oh, very drunk, right? I did find some stories, and one of them was dating back to the 1600s that claims that there was a mermaid that entered Holland through a ditch, and so she was swimming up the ditch, and she got injured in the process, and so they found her, and they apparently transported her to a nearby lake, and they nursed her back to health, and she actually became a productive citizen, learning how to speak Dutch, and she even performed household chores, and eventually converted to Catholicism, and made for a good wife. So this is a tale that the little town likes to think about, this mermaid that they found, and kind of catered her to their, I don't know, human ways. And I found it kind of interesting. They're just and then she became a wife.
Interesting. So it's kind of like that old movie from the 80s called Mermaid.
Yeah, but with
Daryl Hannah.
There was Mermaid? Are you talking about Splash?
Oh, yeah, Splash. Yeah.
Yeah, because there is a mermaid movie. I remember wanting to watch it. It had Cher, and then there were no mermaids in it, and I was highly disappointed.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, not that one. I'm talking about Splash.
Splash? Yeah. Oh my gosh, don't get me on a side tangent on Splash. I watched that not in the 80s. I watched it in like the 2000s when I worked at a movie store selling movies, and so occasionally things would come in and I'm like, yes. Like my older coworker would be like, you've never seen Splash, we're putting this on. And I was like, all right, show me Splash. And then I would watch it and then ring customers up and watch it and ring customers up, and then it gets to the end and like, spoiler alert if you haven't seen Splash, it gets to the end and like Tom Hanks, the love interest, and Daryl Hannah, the mermaid, are like running to the water. They jump in and they're swimming away from like, I guess it was like, I think newscasters, and like they're just swimming away. And that was the end of the movie. I was like, is this like Grease, where this is the ending? We just fly into the sky. We're just swimming in the New York Bay, and then it cut to credits. I was not satisfied.
Right. You're like, well, what happened? Did they have mermaid babies?
Yeah.
Come on.
Right. Did Tom Hanks become a merman? Like, how did this love flourish?
And I know there was a Splash 2.
Oh my
God.
God.
It didn't have the same actors in it, so I didn't watch it.
Just like Grease. I had no idea there was a Splash 2. Look back to research. I found that in other cultures, so I was kind of going culture to culture to see what I could find they were saying about mermaids. So in the Caribbean islands and parts of South America, there was a legend of mermaids that they call the La Siren, and they would be known for holding a mirror, and the backside is actually like a portal that leads to this secret, dark, watery underworld, or like water world, I should say. And so I imagine that that's just like where all the mermaids live. And according to their Caribbean legends, voodoo priestesses are made by descending into the water, into that mirror world with the La Sirens, and re-emerging imbued with her powers. And I'm so down. I'm like, okay, I want to do that. And then in Eastern European legends, there are a lot of mermaids that are basically lost souls of girls who committed suicide or who were murdered. And in Russia, they're called the Rusalka. And so they think that maybe these women who were murdered by drowning, or perhaps maybe right before their wedding, and that these watery ghosts appear as beautiful young women with long, pale green hair and pale skin. And they're suggested a connection with floating weeds, basically being that green hair, and their days are spent underwater, and that's kind of why they're really faint, fair-skinned, because they don't get a lot of sunlight, and they can be seen after dark, basically dancing together under the moon and calling out to young men, and they're basically luring them to the water just to drown them. And so some would say it's because they lost their husband, because they were killed before their marriage, or because of a man did something wrong to them. They're just really vindictive and kind of stuck in that stage. And so it's like a weird characterization of mermaids as always being really desirable but then treacherous, and this weird dichotomy, like you're really, really, really sexy and we want to mess around with you, but we can't trust you. So I don't know what it is about women, and that's like the power that a lot of folklore puts on us, you know? It's like we're beautiful but we're dangerous. Right. This is kind of just, I guess, what they were thinking is a lesson to love, that maybe love can be kind of hard for young people. So maybe they're just trying to dive into the meanings of these legends, maybe. In Japanese legends, mermaids can't speak at all, and their tears turn to pearls. And there's this temple called Temple, right? I'm like, ooh, cry for me. Temple Fuyukoa, or Fukuoka, and it houses the remains of a mermaid, supposed mermaid, that washed ashore in the year 1222, and the bones were preserved, and because of this priest requested it, and he believed that the creature came from the legendary palace of the dragon god at the bottom of the ocean. And so for nearly 800 years, the bones were on display in this temple, and they would use water to soak the bones, kind of to do a ritual, and this was said to prevent diseases in the village. And nowadays they say that only a few of these mermaid bones remain, and they've never been scientifically tested, so no one really knows, but it's just this really cool legend. And I would love to imagine just back in the day they had every little piece of bone kind of like Jurassic Park style, or it's all just laying there connected. Right. Even the tail. Yes. With all its intricate bones. Exactly. Yeah. And then they just like put little droplets of water, and that's how they cure all their diseases. Mm-hmm. And of course, pirates were really, really big believers in superstition and mythical creatures like mermaids. And there's logbooks that Blackbeard kept, and he was an English pirate. For anyone who doesn't know about him, he literally would like turn his beard on fire just to like scare people into thinking he was a ghost. And I've always been like endeared by Blackbeard and his tales. He has records that he instructed his crew on several voyages to steer away from these charted waters that he called enchanted, because he was really afraid of the merfolk and mermaids, and he just didn't want to mess with it. A lot about kind of like how fairies are in Ireland and things like that. Like, you don't go off the path because you don't mess with mermaids, basically. So yeah, in that sense, like, you gotta be careful where you're going. And he had some sightings of mermaids, and he wrote about them in his logs, and he believed that the mermaids brought about bad luck and that they would bewitch the men, and basically they would tempt him with gold but just end up dragging him down to the bottom of the sea. And I gotta wonder, like, what is the mermaids' motivation for all that? Like, why would they spend all their time just drowning humans?
Right. I don't know. Maybe they didn't want them in their territory. Maybe they're territorial.
Right. And then all these like sailor lores kind of led to hoaxers. I'm always encountering and uncovering hoaxers. So in the 1800s, there were men that actually made fake mermaids, and they would sell them by the dozens, basically just to satisfy the public's interest and their curiosity. And there would be like these weird little like stingrays that they would carve faces into and like morph into looking like little kind of like to me they look like little starfish Pokemon, but they would be like, it's a mermaid, and I'm like, that's just not a mermaid, but okay. But people would buy them, and so, you know, supply and demand. And then there was this most famous captured mermaids are the mermaids known as the Fiji Mermaids, and there were several, and all of them were fake, and they originated from Japan, and they were said to be used in religious ceremonies. And then these merchants discovered them, and then they would be sold off because they realized that, oh, they were valuable, so sailors were buying them. And even P.T. Barnum, you know, P.T. Barnum, he was known for the circuses. He ended up buying one, and he displayed one of these Fiji mermaids in the 1840s, and it became a really popular like sideshow attraction. And back in the day, they would charge people 50 cents to go look at the mermaid, and like people would be assuming like, oh, she's gonna be some beautiful girl like sitting on a rock and brushing her hair, I can't wait to go see her. And when they would get in the room, it would be like this grotesque fake corpse that was only a few feet long. It was said that it had a torso and a head, but the head and the limb, okay, so it had a torso, head, and limbs of a monkey, and then the bottom part were a fish. And I'm assuming that they doctored like real animal parts together.
Oh my gosh, that's horrid.
So I don't know why you would be like, there's a mermaid. Thank God they weren't murdering women and just sewing that to some fish. But I'm like, that's just disgusting. Why would you decide to make it look like a monkey?
Right.
And then another Fiji mermaid was found by this American captain, Samuel Barrett Yates. And so he bought it from these Dutch merchants, and they claimed to have bought it from the Japanese fishermen who said that they caught it in their nets. So it was just a lot of like, oh, well, I got it from this person who said it was legit. And it was reported that Samuel sold his ship that he was sailing for $6,000 in order to buy the mermaid. And it wasn't even his ship to really sell, so he got in huge trouble for this. And he was indebted for like the rest of his life trying to pay off this Fiji mermaid that wasn't even real. And then I wanted to find and see if there were any like sightings of mermaids in modern time tales, because most of these old logbooks, I'm constantly coming across logbooks of travelers whenever we do these like, I guess, cryptid creature episodes. And I've just come to the conclusion that I think that most of these people are embellishing, or over time they became embellished. Because in my research, I found John Smith journal that supposedly he saw a mermaid in America, and like his encounter was that he saw this like foamy haired, green haired mermaid, and that he was super turned on by her, and he like walked up to the water and was so like in a trance by her, and then I think she just swims off. And apparently Christopher Columbus said that he saw one. But then when you investigate further, most of these logbooks have been translated or retranslated over time, and so like even people said that Christopher Columbus saw UFOs, but when you debunk that, like all he ever reported seeing was like a light on the horizon. So it's like these things get twisted over time.
So it could have been a star or something.
Yeah. So like I think it's the same with these mermaid sightings, like John Smith. And the one about John Smith, I was at first gonna be like, oh look, John Smith said he saw a mermaid, but then I found more articles that said that article was just something like in a magazine, so it was very pulpy, and it was probably just like very tabloidy. So anyway, I decided, let's see if we can find some more modern stuff that I can actually trace and maybe find the witnesses and something that's not so ancient that it's just been kind of like twisted. So I was really excited that I was able to find some modern mermaid reports. There was one in 2009 that claimed that a mermaid had been sighted off the coast of Israel. So it was in the coast of Israel in a town called Kiryat Yam, and so the mermaid basically was performing a few tricks for onlookers before sunset. So I'm just like, what is she doing performing tricks? What does that even mean? But I didn't get any more, like, is she doing card tricks? I don't know what this woman's doing. And then she just disappeared for the night. And one of the first people to see the mermaid was this guy, Shalom Cohen. And he said that he was with friends when suddenly he saw a woman lying on the sand in a weird way. And at first he thought that she was just another sunbather. But when he approached, she jumped into the water and disappeared. And we were all shocked because what we saw, she had a tail. And so this could be a hoax, or maybe there was literally an Israeli mermaid.
Right.
And then another one in the 2000s was in 2012 in Zimbabwe. There were these construction crews that were scared off from their work on a dam by a pissed off mermaid, and the locals called her Mamba Muntu, and she harassed the workers as they attempted to complete construction. And the locals took this as a bad omen, and they refused to finish construction. I assumed that she was just like, hey, this is my territory, get the hell out of here, stop messing with my water. And so the local council hired basically white men to come by and finish the job. They were like, okay, look, these white guys aren't going to care about these local legends. They'll just do the job and get out of here. But they too got freaked out and ran off by the mermaid. So in an attempt to please the mermaid, the local council members had a new strategy, and the chieftains decided to perform a ritual and a cleansing, basically to be more respectful and then allow further development. And I couldn't really find too many sources on this to corroborate if it was real or not. I just found two articles that were claiming similar things happening. A lot of people, they try to look into the meaning of mermaids and the legends and what do they mean. One woman was thinking that it just meant that it's a desire for humans to be one with animals, and that it's us just recognizing our connection with animals and really the ocean. And when you think about mermaids, I think one of the most common ones is probably the Little Mermaid. So I did a little looking into the original tale of the Little Mermaid, written by Hans Christian Andersen. And this was published back in 1839. And I don't know if you know too much about the original story yourself, but like most fairy tales, it's really dark and tragic. The Disney version is always super beautiful and sweet and has a great ending. But if you look into like Hans Christian Andersen or anything like that, it's morbid.
Yeah, his stories were kind of messed up all across the board.
Yeah, and I think they were always just maybe a cautionary tale for kids, and back then they wouldn't sugarcoat things. Like if you're in the medieval times, kids have serious problems to deal with, like being tortured by creepy werewolves and things like that. So with the whole Hans Christian Andersen Little Mermaid thing, it's about, like we all know, a young mermaid. She falls in love with the human prince, and she saves him from drowning when his ship is crashed. And in the tale, in the book, she has a grandmother, and she tells her, like, really don't envy humans. You live longer lives because you're a mermaid. You're kind of immortal. And this mermaid, she chooses to risk her life in order to save the prince, and kind of just disregards everything her grandma told her. And she ends up trading her beautiful voice, just like in the movie, and even her tongue in the book, though. She trades her actual tongue to a sea witch for this potion to make her human. And so, like in the movie, you know, she gets her legs, but the sea witch is telling her, look, although she's going to be graceful, when you walk with these new human legs, each step is going to be agonizing, like you're stepping on knives. And so she has to work super hard just to walk. She's basically going to die of a broken heart if the prince doesn't end up marrying her. So she has to get this prince and get him to marry her in order to live happy and without pain, or, you know, without dying. And the prince ends up really caring for the mermaid, but he's actually betrothed to a princess of a neighboring kingdom, and he's not just gonna like throw up that marriage, you know? And so it's a little more realistic. I'm like, of course he'd be betrothed. He can't just marry some random mermaid from the ocean. And so this mermaid's sisters are freaked out because they're like, okay, he's not going to leave his betrothed one. That means our sister's going to die. So we need to help our sister. And they end up going to the witch, and they trade their hair to the sea witch for this knife. And this knife is supposedly able to break the spell so that the Little Mermaid can return to the sea. But she just has to kill the prince with this knife before dawn on the day of his wedding. So yeah, the Little Mermaid, she loves the prince and she cannot harm him. So she flings this knife into the sea, and then she just jumps in after it. And then she she dissolves into sea foam, and she becomes a daughter of air and like basically an ethereal being of air. And she still has like an immortal soul, and she just kind of gives up everything by doing basically good deeds in the world of men. And it's a really tragic tale. I'm just like, oh my God, she just watches him marry this other woman and become sea foam. So I looked a little bit into the background of Hans Christian Andersen's motivation to writing this tale. And people actually think it might have been like a secret love letter written to his lover, Edvard Collin. And he actually had a secret homosexual relationship. And that this whole story could be based on a letter that he wrote to him. Hans Christian Andersen wrote a letter to Colin upon hearing that Colin was engaged to a young woman around the same time that The Little Mermaid was written, and he wrote, "I languish for you and for your pretty Calbarian wench. My sentiments for you are those of a woman. The femininity of my nature and our friendship must remain a mystery." And Andersen also sent the original story to his lover, and The Little Mermaid could be basically an allegory for his own love life. Like, he felt like he just had to give up everything and let the prince go off and marry this other woman. So like, he himself is the Little Mermaid. And in some versions of the story, like when the prince meets the Little Mermaid and she's on land with him having fun, he disguised her as a page boy, and she'd be like riding horseback dressed as a guy. So it's like kind of like this whole cross-dressing thing, and it kind of shows Andersen's interest in like changes of identity, like mermaid to human and even female to male. So I thought it kind of made sense that was more of like a love letter to his lover, if anything, and that's why it was so tragic.
Right. Do you have any other kind of pop culture things with mermaids in it? Do you know of any others? I only know of one other that's not the Little Mermaid.
Well, yeah, what do you got?
I started watching this TV show, I think last year, called Siren. It's on Freeform.
Yes!
And
I've heard of it.
You haven't watched it though?
No.
It's kind of cute. It talks about how mermaids are territorial, and basically this girl, her and her sister are, for some reason, up on land, and they kind of start becoming one with the people. And I guess when they're out of water, they already have legs. Like, they just have to come up on land and they no longer have legs. And when they go back into the water, they turn back into a mermaid.
Yeah, there was a lot of legends that are like that, where it's not a big deal. They can just go in and out of their world and ours. And then
but they get sick. Yeah.
Okay.
So in Siren, they end up getting sick if they're not back into the ocean after a certain amount of time.
Yeah.
So they have to keep going back and forth.
Gotcha. I definitely love mermaid stuff. I don't feel like there's enough of it. One of my favorite movies, it's kind of a kid's movie, but I saw it as a teen and it just really warmed my heart, was Aquamarine.
Oh, yeah, that one. I love it.
It's such a cute, like, mermaid story, and it's actually based off an Alice Hoffman young adult book as well, the writer of Practical Magic. And I read the book, I watched the movie. I think that's a really cute mermaid tale. What else is there? Obviously The Little Mermaid, Splash, which we already mentioned.
Right. I was like, oh, Barbie and the Mermaid.
Yes, there is a Barbie mermaid movie. And then I think, like, more accurate, like, mermaids would be like the mermaids from one of the Pirates of the Caribbean movie, maybe the third or fourth one. That was, I did not like that movie, to be honest, but that scene I loved. There's like, because they are the treacherous, monstrous kind of mermaids that we read about. And so they're literally, she's just singing to this pirate, and as she sings to him, it's so beautiful, and he's just like in a trance looking at her, and it's so adorable. And then they pan to like under the water, and all these mermaids are like getting ready to just ambush them, and it becomes like a full out pirate mermaid battle, and it was like worth the freaking movie was that one scene.
That's awesome. I haven't seen Aquaman, but were there mermaids in there?
Oh, I don't actually think that they had mermaids, but they were just very ethereal and like mermaids. I actually do recommend that movie. It's so cheesy but super fun, and like seeing everyone in the underwater world was such a great fantasy, and the effects were so good. Like, I loved looking at all of their beautiful hair flowing under the water. I just loved it. But I don't think there were any actual mermaids that I can remember. There was one race of people, maybe they were mermaids. They were like, they had fish bodies though all around, I want to say. Like, they didn't have human tops. But yeah. So I love mermaids. I kind of think that they might just be something that's based off of folklore, or maybe a creature that we once had and is just now lost.
I like to think that they're still out there, especially since we don't know 95% of the earth. I think that, or 95% of the earth is water, right?
Right.
Or 75, yeah. So, but 95% of the water out there has not been.
That's ridiculous.
We haven't even been
yeah.
there. So if it's just like other mammals or other water dwelling animals, they sometimes don't go where other people are because they don't want us to see them, or they don't want to be a part of our world.
Part of our world.
Exactly.
You know, I wonder, like, how long...
Get me a dingle hopper.
Yes. Can they breathe underwater? Yes, right? Of course they can.
I think so.
So they probably don't. I don't know how, if they have blowholes like a whale, if they didn't ever like emerge, or if they could literally live their entire life hidden from us.
Right. I've seen drawings of different versions of mermaids, so I think some of them think that they have gills on the side of their neck. Mm-hmm. Some people think that they just breathe out of their nose like humans, which I think is not right. I don't think that that would be correct. Like, as humans, we're like always so selfish. We just think everything has to be like us. So I'm just like, I don't think that it's like that.
Yeah.
I think that they probably have gills.
Right. And then you could also play the theory of, well, maybe they do live in like little portals. But honestly, since the ocean's so big, they don't need a freaking portal. They can hide in our own waters.
Right. Unless they're using portals to go from one place of the ocean to the next.
Yeah, maybe so. Like Atlantis or something.
Yeah. Who knows? We've never found it, so maybe they're all there.
Yeah, so did you want to go ahead and move on to unicorns?
Yes, absolutely. The unicorn. Is it a mythical creature or extinct animal? So I found out that the name unicorn is actually derived from the Latin word unicornus, which means one horn. And the first mention of the unicorn was in the Middle East in a place called the Indus Valley, which I looked it up on a map and I'm still kind of confused to where it might be. It's just kind of like I thought it was kind of by kind of the Mediterranean. I don't know for sure. Archaeologists have found carvings of statues and depicting a horse-like creature with a single horn, and they found other things too. It just not just carvings and not just statues, but they found like drawings of them and just all these stories mentioning, like written actual stories mentioning unicorns.
Right.
And they did find some cave drawings in France that were even older than the ones they found in the Indus Valley. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and it kind of surprises me, is that unicorns, they didn't come from mythical stories from what I think. I think they actually were real at one time, but I think that they've gone extinct. So initially when I started researching unicorns, I was like, I want to believe that unicorns are real, but I don't think they are. But now I think after research that they may have been real, but now they're just gone.
Yes, I love it.
Right.
Because they were hunted, I want to say, right?
Yes, they were hunted for magical purposes. So there was this Greek physician named, I'm probably going to butcher his name, but when don't we? He's called Stasius of Cnidus, and he wrote a lot of tales about the unicorn. Like, he seriously went from place to place just gathering people's stories and putting them down in written form. Mm-hmm. And he would get these stories from travelers who were kind of passing through. And this is one of the things that he wrote. He said, there are in India certain wild asses, which are large as horses and even larger than that. And their bodies are white, their heads are dark red, and their eyes are dark blue. And they have a horn on the forehead, which is about 1.5 feet in length. So he wrote of many accounts of that he's taken from people who've traveled all over, and mainly they were in Europe, but I think that by the time that they were extinct, nobody had really been to America except for the Native Americans. And I didn't check into their side to see if they'd ever seen unicorns, but I really think that they were in a specific region and that they were kind of rare, hence the reason why there weren't so many around and they were all pretty much slaughtered.
Because we didn't have horses in America originally, right?
Right, they brought them here.
Right, so I guess America's just not a unicorn place either.
Right. So, I mean, I guess I could say, what did I say? They're all over Europe and the Middle East. And kind of like all mythical creatures, most stories from olden days, the belief kind of varies from region to region and century to century. And the stories of the unicorn, I feel like there's so much magic imbued into it. So it's said that the unicorn horn, when ground up and put in water, it's going to purify the water. In some places that I was reading about, they said that you wouldn't grind it up, you just cut the horn off and drink out of the put water in the chalice and then drink it. Because I think they got a lot of dysentery back in the old day from water that they drank, because they would, this is going to sound kind of gross, but they would go to the bathroom in the water in the old days, and then they'd end up going upstream so that their urine and feces went downstream and then into their drinking water. And so they were always finding ways that you could purify water. Mm-hmm. I heard in other stories, it's just that if the unicorn's horn touches the water, it causes purification. I was like, please let this be it. I hate the thought of this beautiful unicorn's horn being cut off.
Yeah, and it sounds legit. Like, that sounds like a selfish thing to do. That humans are cutting off tusks of elephants, you know? What would stop them from doing the same to unicorns? Right.
So I also found that there were accounts of the horn curing someone who has been poisoned just by touching it. So one of the stories that I came across in several versions, they said that you could eat the horn or just touch it. I wasn't really sure which was correct. I like the fact that if you just pet the unicorn and touched the horn, that would be good enough. But since unicorns aren't real, I feel like they slaughtered all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I mean, if they were being hunted to the point of extinction and they were already rare.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then fast forward to the 1500s, and we have some tales of men who would hunt the unicorn for the horn, and then they would just do it for sport. So they'd mount the horn, and they'd mount it in silver or gold, and then they would give them to gifts to influential people, or they would keep it and boast about it just because they were able to catch the elusive unicorn. So when they would give it to these influential people, it would gain them status. So they would be like, oh, you must be the greatest hunter if you caught a unicorn.
That's so sad, because it's like, at the same time, I think about this beautiful silver, like, unicorn horn on a pillow, like a velvet pillow, and I'm like, oh, it's beautiful. But I'm like, can't you just, like, lure the horse into be captured? Even though that's sad too. Like, I'm not a fan of zoos, but I'm like, why do you have to kill them?
Right. Why can't we live peacefully
God damn
together?
You people.
So I did say, or it is said, that the unicorn would only go to those who were pure of heart, such as virgins. And this gave the unicorn the symbolism of purity. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if that's why they always said that it was white. From region to region, I found out that some of them say that the unicorn was only a white horse, and some of them say that it could have been any horse color, which makes me think of My Little Pony. I mean, I'd like to think of a pink unicorn running around.
Love it. I've seen a lot of artwork of white and or black. I feel like it's like those two colors.
Yeah, white or black. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the myth that they're pure, or this is the part of the unicorn that I think is the myth, is their purity. I think we just used it as a purity symbol so that young girls wouldn't have premarital sex. They'd be like, okay,
oh,
the parents would be telling their kids, you could only see a unicorn if you're virtuous. So that means you can't have sex because you'll never be able to pet the unicorn.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious, and that totally makes sense.
Right?
And then on the other stance, it's like, virgins are so rare, they're a dying breed because everyone's having sex, so the unicorns are rare.
I know. Unicorns are rare. You can never, they just can't come to us unless you're a little child now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's something about kids in general. They're just pure. They haven't been, for the most part, tainted by the harshness of life, hopefully, and I believe that they could tap into magical stuff. So what if kids were literally the only ones who could see mermaids? And unicorns, unicorns.
Yeah, unicorns and mermaids. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I did find out in Scotland during the reign of James III, he actually had coins made just for his reign that depicted a unicorn. He said that he saw one, and so he just thought it was the most magical, beautiful creature he'd ever seen in his life, and he wanted to have it on coins.
That's awesome. I didn't have a mermaid coin, but I had a mermaid pog. Not a mermaid. I keep saying mermaid. Unicorn pog. Does that count?
Pogs. It totally counts. Let's see. I did also come across this story where there was an ancient throne in Denmark, which you can still see today. I guess it's in a museum. And it said that it was made from unicorn horns. Like, it's just this beautiful kind of white gold throne. it's just really a symbol. They found out later that it was actually made out of narwhal tusks, which kind of made me sad. I was like, no, either way, I guess it's sad.
And you know what? I think that like how narwhals, they have the unicorn, basically horn. People would probably say that's where the origin of unicorn came from, just like manatees. Mm-hmm. They're trying to blame all these like fat little aquatic beasts.
Yeah, when I don't think that that's true. I think these probably existed just like mermaids. So I did come across something else too, that historians believe that the unicorn may have been one of many animals, and that really the pictures drawn were done in a way we can only see one horn, when in reality there were probably two. So there are these like horned beasts. I can't remember what they're called. It's some sort of antelope or deer where they have these two horns that kind of stick up off the top of their head. So they think that when people were drawing them, that they were drawing them from the side, and you could only see one of their horns because the horns were parallel to each other. So I think that might be one of the things weird. That other historians believe, that there was a time that these creatures walked the earth, but due to the coveted horn, as we talked about earlier, they were just slaughtered and left extinct. And that makes me so sad.
Hey guys, this is Wendy. We had some challenges with our audio this episode and we lost our whole ending. It was kind of a bummer. But basically what you missed out on is us talking about unicorns and pop culture. I'm sorry that you didn't get to hear that. We also wanted to say thank you so much for joining us this first season. It has been a blast. We will keep you posted on a return date. Thank you for listening. Find us on Instagram and Facebook under Cousins Coven, all one word. And don't forget to check out our blog at cousinscoven.home.blog. You can also sign up for our newsletter while you're there. Don't forget, we're going to be doing that newsletter while we're on break, so you want to make sure to subscribe. Don't forget to follow us, like and subscribe, and all that jazz on all of our platforms. And send cauldron topic ideas, questions, or your paranormal experiences into cousinscoven2@gmail.com. While we're on break, we'll look forward to getting that information to us so that way we can add it in our next season. May you find happiness in your heart, love for yourself, and joy in each other. Blessings to all.